Hello and welcome to the Wealthy Trades Daily Market Forecast for May 6th, 2015. Let's get started right away. Yesterday we had a pretty wild day down. We're starting to see some volatility kick back up. Here's the thing, we've seen this many times before. In fact, this has kind of been one of those things that we've seen for the last about 2.5 years. We've had these kind of false sell-offs down to some key levels, only to have people get real bearish and then see the market just rally aggressively. But we did have a pretty decent day down yesterday. The SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, excuse me, opened at 211.03 and closed at 208.90. And so, pretty decent day down. Volatility starting to come back in. Let's look at the SPY chart real quick just to kind of see where we're sitting. We are sitting kind of right at a fairly decent level that I wouldn't be surprised if we get a bounce from. It's kind of interesting that the levels we're putting in is because this pivot low at 207.62 is going to be pretty key. That's the pivot low down here. And then, on Monday, I believe it was, we put in a pivot high of 212.02. The problem is we didn't break that prior pivot high, that all-time high that we had put in at 212.48. So this is going to be a very interesting area. In this area, if we break 207.62, we might head down and test these lows at 204, right? If we break 212.02, then we might head up and test, push obviously to all-time highs. And so I think if we break 207, that could probably dictate the next, 4 or 5% lower. All right, so maybe down to 200, maybe even a little lower. And if we break 212 and close, so we got to close above or below these levels. If we close above 212, then we may see 4 or 5%, or maybe even that start. Again, I've been saying I think we're going to 230, 2300 or so in the S&P 500 before year end. So I do think that we're going to see that'll put the SPY up to about 230. So I think we're going to probably see a 7-8% rally. That's my opinion before the end of the year. Now, if we start breaking some of these technicals on the downside, we'll have to kind of readjust. But that is the SPY yesterday. For our trades, we were long. Now, Coach it's interesting because Coach actually shifted into a downtrend, but we were short in Coach. Let me just make sure. Yep, we were short in Coach. And Coach ended up almost break even, down ever so slightly, shorted at $38, and it closed at 38.07. So down ever so slightly, and then we were long EMN. It was up actually really nice at one time. I didn't book the profits, but it opened at 79.40, closed at 79.54. So it was about a break-even day for us. But not bad considering that the market was down, over 1%. So I'm not gonna, be mad at a break-even day when the market's down, 1% plus. So before I go into what we're going to be doing today, our weekly trades, what we are is we're short SWN and long UNH. And this trade is looking really good. And I got to tell you, this is one of the reasons you got to subscribe. You got to make sure that you're watching Wealthy Trades and you understand what you're doing. You're watching the resources. SWN is down. It opened this week at, give me a second here. I think it was at 28.80. Yep, it opened this week at 28.80. And that's where we shorted, and it's now at 28.15, so it's up about 2.25% on that short. And then we are long UNH, and UNH is down about 0.25%. But so overall, with the trade, because we do half and half, we're up about 1% in comparison to the market that is down 1%. So again, great outperformance on our weekly trades. I expect that to continue. So that is good. Does look like the futures are going to open up to the positive side, and we are going to go short, and we're going to go short without a hedge, without a pairs trade, because we are in a downtrend. Again, it's still not a great downtrend, only 51.4% of the stocks in a downtrend, but that's okay. The quality is above 50%, so therefore we are going to just take a short position. All right, even though the market is going to it looks like it's going to gap higher at the open a little bit, that's okay because we're still technically in that downtrend. In fact, it gives us sometimes, a lot of times, it gives us better opportunities and better areas to short at. So it's actually sometimes a really decent environment to short on days that we're in a downtrend, we're coming off of a downtrend day, and then it gaps higher. That's a lot of times a very good time to short. But let's figure out what we're going to do. We are going to obviously short, and it's going to be in the best sector to short in, which is the XLV, which is a little oxymoronic because that's our best sector to go long in on the weekly basis, but that happens. That's why we've got multiple time frame analysis. On a weekly basis, again, the XLV looks great because on a longer term basis it looks good. And on a monthly basis, if you remember, the XLV also looks good. But on a daily basis, short term basis, it doesn't look great. So what we're going to do on our short term trades, day trades, we're going to look to take advantage of that and look to short the best stock within the XLV. So I'm going to move the XLV itself over into my portfolio. And then I'm going to come down and move the top 8 stocks within the XLV into my portfolio. Into my portfolio here. And got a little bit of a lag, but these are being moved over into my portfolio slowly but surely. Once they're in my portfolio, here's the portfolio tab, the little middle tab. Also, I think it's important, you can look up any stock you want. All right, so the dashboard gives you the market trend and the quality and the sectors and the best stocks in those sectors in that direction, right? And then you can put those stocks in your portfolio by hitting the plus tab. Your portfolio is right here. This is the portfolio consists of any stock that you hit the plus sign on. Let's say that you want to look up Netflix or you want to look up whatever stock you want. You go to the search tab, the little spyglass, and hit search. And let's say I want to look up Netflix. Well, I type in Netflix. There it is. I can pull it up, and I got all the levels to win stats on Netflix. For example, today, all right, Netflix has an expected high for today of 571.97, an expected low of 559.13. It's got a 42% probability of hitting that upside, and when it does, it typically breaks out. So actually, this is going long Netflix today. This is not going to be my trade, by the way, but going long Netflix today is a good trade because it makes money on the counter trend side. So historically, when it closed at 565.55. But when it hit, and then the expected downside, it's in an uptrend, and the expected downside low is 559.13. Let's look at this on the chart, just so you guys can see this. All right, so the expected downside today is 559.13. Well, when it hits that 559.13, it typically hits it and rallies higher. I know that because it makes money at the levels to win area. So that's great, and it makes money on the breakout side. So Netflix, but anyway, long story short, you can look up any stock you want using this. And let's say I want to put Netflix in my portfolio. Well, I just hit add to my portfolio, and now Netflix is now in my portfolio. But I'm going to take it out because that's not one we're looking at. So, all right, remember what we're doing. We're going short today, just a short, no hedge. The healthcare sector is the best sector to short in, so I've got all the stocks within the healthcare sector, the top 8 in my portfolio. I'm going to go through them. We're going to use my drill down analysis. My first technique is to look at the levels to win profit, and as you can see, the XLV loses money when it hits the counter trend side. It doesn't lose a lot of money, but when it hits that level, it does have a tendency to go a little lower because it loses money. Okay, so I'm going to eliminate the XLV, and then I can actually use. Now, think about this. I can actually use the XLV if I go short in one of these stocks within the healthcare sector. I can have the XLV as a gauge where what I mean by that is, let's say I short in ESRX, which is probably not going to be my trade, but let's just say I do. And the XLV starts to rally, right? So it starts to rally up and it hits 72.77. Well, I know that the XLV, when it hits that level, that counter trend level, it typically goes higher. So I might use that as one of my gauges to potentially get out of my short trade in that stock, or maybe take off some of the position, whatever it might be. But for now, I'm just going to eliminate the XLV because it doesn't make any money. So let's go through, and I'm going to go through, and I'm just going to look at the levels to win profit, and just click on them and eliminate anything that doesn't make money. So MNK, see you later. Remember, SWN and UNH are the weekly trades, so I don't need to look at those. CERN, see ya. Okay, so there's we've got these 6. That looked good. Now the next technique I'm going to use is it's the easiest way to do it is once you have it down to the ones that make money on both sides in the direction of the trend of the overall trend. What I do is I look for the spread between the levels on levels, trend side and the counter trend side. The reason why is, again, think about this. ESRX closed at 84.61. The trend side, because it's in a downtrend, the trend side is 83.46. That's the expected downside level. It's got a 50% chance of hitting that. It's got an expected high of 85.76, and it's only got a 32.7% chance of hitting that. But here's the deal. It has a 25% chance of closing lower than this, outside of this number, so lower than 83.46. It only has a 13.5% chance of closing higher than this. So if I'm looking to short that, that's a good thing. I want this spread. I want a very high percent, or I want a higher percentage of it closing below this, and I want a low percentage of it closing above this. That gives me an indication of how strong the trend is historically and how good shorting a stock like ESRX on a Wednesday is. I know that when it hits these levels, it typically closes lower because it makes a profit, and I need to know that it has a much higher probability of closing lower than this trend side, based on the levels on levels, than it does on closing above the counter trend side, based on the levels on levels. That is my indication of a very high quality shorting opportunity that gives me the best probabilities based on history. Okay, but so I'm going to use the spread 25 and 13, and I'm just going to compare these. Well, 25 and 13 is better than 25 and 19. I want a wide spread, right? So the wider the better. So ESRX is better than VAR. 26 and 21. ESRX is better than, well, I can't, UNH isn't, that's our weekly, so never mind. 34 and 15 is better than 25 and 13, so I'm going to eliminate ESRX. So now Progo is the best, 34 and 15. Well, let's look at that compared to HCA. 25 and 19, it's better than that. 28 and 17, well, 34 and 15 is better than that, so Progo is still the best. ACT, 26 and 21, it's not as good as 34 and 15. So therefore, the short for today is PRGO. Why is it PRGO? Well, let's recap real quick. We're in a downtrend, indicated by 51.4% of the stocks in the S&P 500 moving down. The quality of that downtrend, this is our momentum gauge. You know, what is the quality? It is 61.2%. That's good enough for us to take a directional bias, just a straight out directional bias. If you remember, we haven't had a lot of these days where we've taken a directional bias since April 1st. I'm sorry. Essentially since March 16th, we've only taken a directional bias probably 5 times or so. So we're taking a directional bias today because the quality is above 50%. These are the best stocks in the XLV. We then pared that down and found that Progo, PRGO, not only makes money on both sides, so when it hits 185.20, it's a very good area to short at. So that's an entry. We have one entry level potentially at 185.20 because that historically makes a lot of money. That's great. We have another entry at 191.32 because when it hits that, it makes money. We're going to short at the open, but we also know it has a much higher probability. It has a 34.6% probability of closing lower, which is good because we're shorting, closing lower than 185.20. It only has a 15.4% probability of closing higher than 191.32, which, again, we don't want it to close above 191.32 because we're going to short. So we've got 3 entries here. I'm going to enter short at the open, and I'm going to close at the end of the day. But I could also, if it sells off and it hits 185.50, I can go short at that level. That's a really good historical level. Look how profitable it is. It makes a lot of money there historically. I could also go short at 191.32. Historically, that's profitable too. And I can look at the chart here and see, I actually really like this. Now think about this. If you remember, I talk about these shift levels. Well, look at this. Uptrend, 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 downtrend. It shifted because it broke below this and closed below this pivot right here, this 189.63. Right here, it closed below that. Closed at 188.28. Well, now it's kind of moving back up towards that shift level. Closed at 188.36. It's moving back up towards that shift level. That's typically a really good area to short. We'll get kind of a continuation move down. Not only that, but it has a big kind of area of buying pressure right here that I think it's going to go tag, and that's all the way down to like 160. I'm not saying it's going to happen today, but I think PRGO is a great short for today. So that is the trade. I'm going to go short at the open, close at the end of the day. You have two other entries that you can have is 185.20 or 191.32. I'm going to be sending out some earnings alerts today on some plays, potentially a couple plays. The last few have been tough. This market again, I've been taking bullish bias directional trades based on getting an odds in my favor based on undervalued options. Going to stick to that process. May do some straddles today. We'll see, but we got to continue. I'm going to do a little video today on the process and the reasoning behind the picks. So weekly trades are looking good, and today we are going short PRGO. Make it a great day. Let me know if you have any questions. Email me at info@wealthytrades.com.